Good evening. Welcome into the Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Werner back here in Illinois. Derek Piper at Bryce Jordan Center, where Jalen Pickett just had one of the most epic performances I've seen by an Illini opponent. 41 points, a 40 burger. The last Illini opponent to do that was Carson Edwards back in 2018. That's pretty dang good company. Likely two all Big Ten first team guards there. Illinois loses 93-81 at Penn State, and Penn State is just a different team at Penn State, Derek. They've beaten some really good teams in their home arena this year. Illinois, the latest, they're 5-3 during Big Ten play at home. They've beaten Indiana there. They've beaten Michigan there. I believe they've beaten Rutgers there. So they're pretty good there, and they're really good against Illinois. They've now hit 24 of 52 threes against Illinois this year. And this one kind of got out of hand defensively early for what is supposed to be a really good Illinois defensive team. They just went from 17 in the KenPom to 25 in KenPom defensive efficiency, Derek. So what the heck happened there?
Man, Penn State can be a load offensively. They're one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, and then you have Jalen Pickett, who's been a surefire first-team All-Big Ten guy for months at this point, and tonight was just unbelievable. Like you said, I can't remember. I do recall the Carson Edwards performance against Illinois. That might have been against the freshman Trent Frazier at the time, and Edwards was spectacular there in Champaign. But Keon Johnson, when we were going through some of the, I was looking up 35 plus after you'd already looked up 40, and I stole your stat. My bad.
Good stat.
We remember the Keon Johnson Winthrop performance, Corey Sanders from Rutgers. Illinois couldn't do anything with them. And I don't want to say I was shocked as far as Penn State putting up a good amount of points. It's a desperation spot for them. They've played really well at home. I mean, even coming into this, even though they had lost all 4 games in February, they had won 4 out of their last 5 Big Ten games in this building, made a bunch of threes in those wins. And we know that Pickett is a really unique matchup at the point guard. But to that point, I thought without Illinois switch everything and having, okay, let's start – I thought it'd be Shannon. It was actually Coleman Hawkins. But we saw Coleman against Mulcahy in that second half be able to shut him down. To have those matchups work out better for you, it seemed like Illinois could slow him down a little bit more. I didn't think you'd completely shut him down, but contain him because he's gone up against some bigger defenders around the league. I even know when Michigan was playing him, they had Dickinson on him. Like it's so weird for people to try to guard him because he loves the post game, but then to be able to have him shoot the three this year, like he was a sub 30% three-point shooter last year. Now he shot about 39% from three in Big Ten play. Not a super high volume, but Illinois made some mistakes, giving him some open looks early. He was able to kind of hurt them in the drop coverage a little bit too, where he gets that mid-range and attack that. I know he talked about that after the game, is that they were guarding him similar to last year when Kofi was playing, there at Illinois, and he had a pretty good game in Champaign last year too, but to see kind of the deja vu of the December game, and even to a further extent, like the points per possession, obviously the 93 points is a gaudy number. Penn State lit up Illinois and Champaign. They just torched them here to another level.
So, Derek, I'm sitting here thinking, like, why can't they guard this guy? Why can't they guard this team? And I did find it very interesting that Hawkins was on him to start the game, and we know Coleman's a really good defender. He had no answer for him. Went under a couple of screens and Pickett took advantage of that. Then they put Rogers on him, and there was a lot of busts there when they did switch. I don't think they came out wanting to switch, Derek, but then they threw it at him, and there were so many busts, whether it was with Sincere Harris or Terrence Shannon or whoever it was, and then Terrence Shannon just followed them a lot. They said they had no answer, and when Pickett did get doubled, he passed out to a teammate, and they made 10 of 18 threes in the first half. Like, when Funk made his first one, Lundy made his first one, and then Clary got going and Pickett made some three. I was like, this is going to be a bad night because you let that team hit some shots early, as we saw in December. They're really tough to defend. And after that, it just felt like Illinois was on their heels, and they kind of lost their edge after that.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, I mean, Lundy, Funk, and Pickett all got going within like the first 5 minutes of the game. And I don't want to say that this building got roaring because there was barely anybody here. It felt like to see it. But, that was a game where, again, they really needed it and then start to feel good about themselves on their home floor. And to give Funk a couple in transition as far as open looks. He doesn't need a whole lot of space. I thought that their other guard,
Clary
had a
I
good
didn't
game.
know who he was, to be honest. But he made some huge buckets. Like Illinois would make a run, which is like 6-0 or something, and you're like, oh, they're back in this game. And Clary would get a bucket on Sincere Harris, and you're like,
Yeah,
where did this kid come from?
I know he had a good game against Maryland. I know that looking at the stats, and then for him to be able to kind of drive you, that was some of the concerning parts of even when you're trying to look for a little bit of a lull in Penn State's scoring barrage, and thought that because Illinois, especially in the second half early, was scoring pretty well themselves, and maybe if Penn State goes 3.5, 4 minutes without scoring, all of a sudden Illinois might be within a possession or two. But it was kind of the offensive rebounds, putbacks that were able to extend kind of this stretch of scoring for them when they were already shooting it really well, or just getting a downhill drive. Like you mentioned, some of the switching mishaps when Pickett has 30 and you bust a switch and he gets a layup, like that just can't happen. I mean, they had one where he was rolling there late first half, and it was I think it was Terrence and Epps busted a switch and gave Pickett, who had already had 3, maybe even 4 threes, just bury another one. And I agree with you. I asked Brad about the switching. He said that Penn State, with the way that they run their offense, because of how much screening they do, how much rub action they do, they will force you into that if you don't guard them well, sticking man on man, because you'll give up some angles on screens, you'll give up some driving lanes. I don't think they wanted to do that, but then all of a sudden there were some of the flashbacks because Pickett would get a matchup on Epps, Pickett would get a matchup on Sincere Harris, and they just couldn't push the right button because all of it was going wrong for you.
Yeah, and when Dane got on him, boy, it was hard to play Dane tonight. He had a nice start to the second. That's just a tough matchup for him, the way they play offense. And when you're playing catch up, you can't trade 3s for 2s. And Dane can score some of those 2s, but you're giving up 3s. The stat that was ridiculous to me, Derek, they didn't miss more than 2 shots in a row until the 12-minute mark of the second half, when they missed 4 in a row and Illinois got it to 7. You're like, oh, here's the run. Here's the defensive stops. And that was fool's gold because you gave a bunch of free throws. You gave up a couple layups, used to the putback. You just could never get enough stops to do it. Yeah, I mean, Derek, I see people saying, like, you got to try something different defensively. I thought they did in this game, just with personnel, with different schemes. But I do feel like Penn State and Shrewsbury deserves a lot of credit for this. Jalen Pickett, who's just a really smart basketball player, an effective one. I thought those guys did a great job of putting Illinois into situations they didn't want to be in.
Yeah, they did, like you mentioned, try to double him a little bit in the post. They did go to switching later there in the second half. So they did try some different things. I know that some had mentioned on Twitter, and I see in the comments as well, maybe trying to blitz him when he's in his ball screens, especially once you got Dane out of the game, because Dane, without being able to be much of an offensive factor, wasn't that great on the glass, was kind of a defensive liability. And Penn State can really kind of exploit him when they put 5 shooters on the floor. And I mean, we saw it with Kofi too. When you have that landlocked guy there in the lane and putting Dredd or Hen at the 3-point line can kind of make him a tough guy to be out there. So with Hawkins at the 5, maybe I'm kind of surprised. Big picture, I thought as we looked at it going into the year, Hawkins playing the 5, I thought Illinois would kind of trap some ball screens sometimes get up and be really aggressive and force the ball out of the point guard's hands or go for those type of things. But that's kind of the thing with Penn State that you can kind of counter with, is say, well, if Pickett passes out of a double, you're giving up probably a 3, and this team just shoots the 3 so well. So that's kind of the give and take with it. I don't think this was a game. I thought the first matchup in Champaign was one of those. There's a specific game plan to switch, and then when it didn't go well, Illinois couldn't counter. They just kept switching Pickett into good matchups, and I didn't think that Brad pulled a different button out for that game. And this one, he did try some different stuff. It just didn't seem to work, and the players do got to own some of that too. We got to be able to stop him in some form or fashion. I know that Brad was talking about the lack of defensive intensity tonight, and then also you tip your cap to a guy that's really talented and having a hell of a year.
Yeah. Illinois' last 3 losses, you've had 3 pretty epic individual performances when you think about it. Trace Jackson Davis, Now, you could say Illinois needed to do something different, and I would agree. Get the ball out of Trace Jackson Davis's hands, but he had an epic performance. Tony Perkins stopped fouling, but Tony Perkins still hit a bunch of great shots. And then Jalen Pickett tonight. So I don't know what that says about Illinois, a pretty good defensive team, but the last 3 losses they've had in Big Ten play here, Derek, the only 3 over the last 2 months of calendar time here, or month and a half, has been 2 pretty epic 3 pretty epic performances here. I don't know if there's a trend or a correlation between all of that.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that other than you can't guard Trace one-on-one this weekend. I know that you do not try to that again. I mean, Tony Perkins doing what he did, like you said, a lot of it was at the free throw line. Anytime a guy shoots 16 free throws, probably going to put up some gaudy numbers. But yeah, it's of course a little puzzling, head scratching. Why does someone that doesn't put up all that big of numbers offensively have his career night, and Jalen has his career night, Trace career night, for a team that, going into tonight was 15th in the country defensive efficiency. So I know sometimes and people kind of roll their eyes when Brad says, well, I didn't have a problem with insert name here scoring a boatload of points. It was the other guys. Because
he didn't say that with Jalen tonight, did he?
No, he didn't.
41 we don't worry about.
I'm glad he didn't do the 41 didn't bother me. Sometimes their defense is designed to play kind of a little bit on an island. You gotta play one-on-one defense. They don't want to help off of the perimeter because that's kind of what leads to their ability to, I know tonight's the outlier, but limit some teams from 3 and don't give those 3-point looks because you don't help too much and everything. But yeah, there's no doubt that you kind of gotten worked a little bit by some guys, and you got to make sure it doesn't happen on Saturday because Trace is up there with Edie as far as dominance in the Big Ten.
Here's the thing. Illinois get a top 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament because you don't want to see Penn State as the 10 or the 11 if you're the 6 or 7. You don't want to see this team.
I hope they make the tournament. I hope they do. I think they're a fun team. I've enjoyed them all year long.
And he's a heck of a player who can go off. This is a team that go to the Sweet 16 because of the way they shoot it. And Shrewsbury, I think, is just a great, phenomenal X's and O's coach.
I agree. Fully agree with all that. I think that I would be very tempted to probably take them around too far. I mean, I wouldn't go beyond Sweet 16, but they have kind of the formula, even almost like a mid-major team, where they got the 3-point bombers. They'll play a little bit unconventional with the 5-out offense and having like a small ball 5. Old team,
really old, yeah.
I like them. I hope they get on a run and get in there.
All right, Derek, should we address a few positives? I mean, the offense was good tonight. When you score 1.2 points per possession in a game, you expect to win it, especially with the way Illinois plays. But I did think Terrence Shannon scoring 20 was a good thing. I thought he had a really strong second half, really was aggressive to the rim for most of the night. He and Hawkins had a couple pull-up threes that you didn't want in certain situations. But I do think that was a small positive for Illinois. Luke Goody made a 3, which was good to see. RJ Melendez made a 3, even though he barely played tonight. But Ty Rodgers, man, the breakout continues. 10 of his 11 in the first half. He's getting really confident with his ability to take the ball off the dribble and finish at the rim. And you can see he's got some skill to him at finishing around the rim. He's got that strength. And then leading the team in rebounds with 8, had 3 assists. Ty Rodgers has been their best bench player for a while here.
Definitely. It's really good to see Ty's confidence offensively because he is someone that with his handle, with his strength, with his athleticism to be able to make those athletic finishes around the basket, it's something that he can provide. And I asked him about it afterwards. We got to talk to Terrence and Ty and kind of said what's different early in the season versus now with you offensively. And he said it's just kind of things slowing down for him. It kind of the traditional freshman lines as they get settled in. And he knows that that's something he's capable of. So he's attacking with aggressiveness. That's been good to see. I do agree, Shannon, you just want to continue to try to have him get some confidence and go downhill more often. He was able to do that. This isn't a very good Penn State defensive team, and they don't have rim protection. So it kind of set up for him to have a nice night, which in the stat line he did. And Luke Goody to make one of those corner triples. We know that those shots have come pretty regularly for this squad is being able to get some kickouts, whether it's you're playing through Dane, which Dane didn't play all that well, and I thought that the matchup would have worked a lot better for him tonight. But when guys get downhill too, you can kind of kick it to that corner, and for him to have one go down was good. And I know that he'll be looking forward to putting some more up in his home state against Indiana on Saturday.
1 for 20, Jaden Epps over his last 4 games from 3. Any concern there, Derek?
Yeah, some, because he's someone that wants to obviously live in the lane, and I think that you can't really make guys go over ball screens with him. They're going to go under his screens. They're going to make him shoot threes. When you just continue to stack it up, where Illinois has another night as collectively they shoot 25% from 3. I know Jaden going 0 for 7 definitely contributes to that.
Yeah, him and Shannon combined 1 for 12. That came out.
No, and I mean, Meyer is still, to my knowledge, the only guy shooting over 30% in Big Ten play from deep, and Epps has really slipped here. So I wouldn't call Illinois, whether they're going to go Hawkins, Shannon, Epps. They're not non-shooters by any means, because we've all seen them be able to make them, but they're way too inconsistent. I still think that can be the downfall of Illinois when you look at them in March, is because, they can be a little predictable as far as wanting to get in the lane. And if Meyer has an off night, or if teams really dial in on him and other guys don't make threes, it's a downfall for this team right now.
Meyer's stat line's a little deceiving here. You and I were talking about player grades. He ends up with 11 points, 7 rebounds, only 6 shots in this game, 3 assists as well. He got caught with his hands on his knees a couple times defensively here, and especially the Seth Lundy 3 out of a baseline out of bounds. I thought was a really bad moment for him. Gambled in transition for a steal that allowed a wide open 3. Is Penn State, they throw that ball around. You give somebody an open 3, whoever it is, seems like they're going to make it. So I didn't think it was a very strong performance by him. I thought Coleman had a solid game. He's starting to get a little bit of that hook shot going. Took some nice in rhythm threes, took a forced 1 or 2. Wasn't as good on the glass, though. I thought this team got, even though they won the rebound battle, Derek, despite Penn State not making many shots, I just didn't feel like there was an edge or physicality to them tonight on the glass either, because they needed to own that, and they really didn't.
Right, for sure. And when you have a team shooting like near 60% from the field the entire game, and then they're able to scoop in some second chance points and just extend what's already a tough night for your defense, that's not good. I do think that Coleman, he was able to hit a 3 early. I still like the catch and shoot ones, like right at the line, versus you had to keep the logo 3 streak going as far as the
step back, man, was
step back was brutal. The right hook in the lane, I like it. I know that we don't really think of Coleman as having much of a post-up game. There was one time where he tried to post up and maybe got out physical and didn't put up a good shot attempt. But having him a little bit more aggressive, 10 to 15 feet and in, is good as far as that goes. And, Meyer took some questionable shots. He does try to get – he kind of kicks out his legs sometimes as the Reggie Miller and got one of those. But even in the second half, once Illinois was switching, they were trying to get Shannon switched off of Pickett and get Meyer on him, because then Pickett kind of took Meyer into the post a little bit. So not a great defensive night for him. And obviously his shooting stat line looks fine, but he didn't play all that well.
All right, Derek, you get 1 of 2 on the road this week. I think you feel fine. You would have thought it was Penn State. Probably not Indiana, the hottest team in the Big Ten. Indiana's got a game tomorrow night, but it's a big one now. Here's the weird thing. I don't know if Illinois really got much chance to move up NCAA tournament seeding. Like, I don't know if they can get past the 5, maybe like if they go on an insane run, but I just don't know if that's going to happen with the schedule that they have left. You want to get a top 4 Big Ten finish. Obviously, you can still do that, but tonight's a rough one for that. But if you can bounce back against Indiana, that's big. But you're playing at Indiana against a team that looks like, if there's any threat to Purdue in this Big Ten race, I think it's Indiana. Yeah,
and you're going to their home building where they've been awesome. I mean, Penn State's been pretty good here, but I mean, another level of test when you're going to have a sold-out Assembly Hall, and just the way that they've been on a roll here. And I mean, Indiana is in that conversation of best bet for, I know I wrote it on Inquirer, best bet for a Final Four. And, a week and a half ago, I still went with Purdue, even though I've had some questions all year long. I mean, look, they're a really good team. Edie's dominant.
The freshman guards away from Mackey, though, is starting to become an issue for them.
Yeah, for sure. And Indiana, with still getting Xavier Johnson back at some point. Race Thompson was out again. He hasn't been playing all that well, but Trace has been that good to be able to have Galloway and Kopp be enough for them, and then Hutchifino. So we saw what Indiana did. I mean, Indiana punked Illinois in Champaign, not only with – I mean, they were the more physical, energetic team, and then Trace just owned you. I don't think that he's obviously a bad matchup when you look at one-on-one matchups with Dane or Coleman. So they got to be able to have a different game plan, and if you double him, you gotta hope they don't make threes, because they're a team that has, contrary to kind of what a lot of people thought going in, because in recent years they hadn't shot the three that well. They've been one of the better, more effective 3-point shooting teams in the conference. So
I think we lost Derek. But yes, Indiana, Illinois. This is going to be a big one for Illinois to try and bounce back, but that's a tough one. It's a really, really tough one to bounce back from, given what Indiana just did to you. This was kind of built as the revenge tour for Illinois this week, as these are two teams that kind of punked them at home earlier in the season. I think it's a tough game. It's a really tough game, but here's the thing. I'm not going to make huge presumptions or huge takeaways from some of these road games in the Big Ten against teams that Penn State, I think, is better than their record. They're just not a very good road team, except for Illinois. And I think it's a bad matchup for Illinois with an older team that can shoot that many threes and stretch you out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Illinois bounces back against Penn State. We'll try to get Derek back on here at some point, but I do want to bring up Zachary Perrine leaving Illinois after just 2 months. I did see Derek tweet out that Brad Underwood said this was very surprising, that this turned pretty quickly. And it sounds like, and hopefully I'll get Derek back on here, that Zach Perrine got a pretty good professional offer, because let me get Derek's tweet. He left pretty quickly. And this is last week, Brad Underwood was talking about how Zach was really taking a step forward. They liked what they were seeing from practice, and that they were hoping he could be at some point, maybe not this season, but next season, a pretty impact player for them. Here's what Brad said. It's what you deal with when some international kids, and having the opportunity to go make it a career, wish him nothing but the best. I mean, that seems to really say that he's got professional opportunities, which he did when he signed with Illinois as well. But Zachary Perrine, don't know what he was going to be. I never thought he was going to make a big impact this year. I don't think he changes their season or their trajectory, but he does open up a scholarship for next year. Illinois certainly was high on Zachary Perrine and what his skill set could be. But the fact that now he's moving on, it opens up a scholarship where Illinois is certainly going to add a transfer to the front court, because Coleman Hawkins is likely going to go pro, barring not being a top 45 pick, barring him saying, no, I wouldn't want to be on a two-way contract. I'm not going to take that kind of risk. Seems like Coleman Hawkins wants to go pro, and that the NBA will sign him to a deal that will pay him at least hundreds of thousands of dollars next year. So with Matthew Meyer gone, Coleman Hawkins gone, you need help in that front court with Dane Danger and Ty Rodgers. You need somebody who can be an offensive threat. Maybe Imani Hansberry can be that early, but you'd like to add somebody who's a veteran who can make shots, who can do some of the things that Coleman Hawkins does, be a versatile guy like Matthew Meyer and Coleman Hawkins are. So that's where I think they will go. They also need some transfer wings, potentially a transfer guard as well. So you'd expect Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon to go pro after this year. That would open up 2 more scholarships. So that's my big takeaway from this, is you'll likely have 3 or 4 transfers coming in next year. And Derek Piper is back with us. Derek, I was just talking about Zachary Perrine leaving the Illini after 2 months. What did you hear about this, and what do you make of this?
First of all, let me tell you how much Penn State doesn't care about basketball. They don't put the outlets. There's no power on press row. So my computer just died. I had to move over here to the scores table. That was been an ongoing issue. I made it just long enough to the press conference, but sorry about that.
No, appreciate you.
Yeah. Perrine leaving mid-year, it's very disappointing, because it's a guy they're really excited about. I mean, just as early as recently as late last week, Brad was talking about how much progress he had made to get some extended minutes and try to get his feet wet a little bit, and just have him as another piece, and just to see someone that's pretty talented try to show what they can do at the Big Ten level. So I know there was kind of always the wonder of, can you get him enough opportunity in year one to keep him happy? I think, or at least they thought there was understanding going into the year that this was going to be especially after the delay of getting him on campus and getting him in mid-year. It was more about development the rest of this semester and being able to get in with Fletch and work on his game, have him practice against Dane and Coleman and everything. But this was someone that had professional opportunities coming into the situation in the summer when he was kind of deciding about college and getting recruited. And it sounds like, and Brad, Scott Ritchie asked him how sudden was this, and I asked Terrence too. Like, it sounded like this developed pretty quickly, and all of a sudden he's out of here. And Brad even mentioned that's kind of the reality when you're dealing with international guys that have a chance to go make this a career. So to me, it sounds like he got an offer that he liked and just kind of said, I'm out. So he had the ability to make six figures over in France prior to deciding to commit to Illinois. So that was kind of something that Illinois was trying to compete against recruiting wise, just, try to convince him to come to college, the benefit of what that could look like versus him staying there professionally. So it was a journey that obviously got disrupted a little bit, had to go to Sunrise. And he's someone that, has gotten attention from even, like Jonathan Gavoni and some people at the next level know who this guy is because he's played so well on the FIBA circuit with the French junior national team. So it kind of opens things up as far as I think that you look at the portal, maybe a little bit more so at the stretch four position, but it doesn't kill you. It doesn't really hurt you this year. It doesn't kill you big picture, but it is a piece that Illinois was pretty excited about. And Jeff Alexander definitely put a ton into this one.
I was going to say, like, he put so much effort into this one, and to get 2 minutes of work out of Zachary Perrine on the floor certainly is really disappointing for Jeff. So wish the best to Zach, and man, he makes some money overseas, but it's just like, well, you had that opportunity before you came here and started this entire process. But being away from home can't be easy when you're 17, 18 years old, and then have that opportunity and you're not playing, which I don't blame Illinois for not playing Zachary Perrine when they're in the middle of a Big Ten race for a kid who's probably not going to make a big impact at least early. It just stinks for Illinois to put some effort into that one. But as I was saying before you came out here, Derek, they could add up to 4 transfers now, because if Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon are gone, as we would expect, probably other attrition. There's usually attrition. There could be a lot of transfers coming in here to go along with Ty Rogers, Dane Danger, Jaden Epps, Sincere Harris, Luke Goody, whatever your core is going to be.
For sure. I think that with the assumption that Coleman's going to go, turn pro and have a chance at the NBA, based on the projections and everything, that the stretch 4 position is going to be a pretty big deal. We know that Dane being there at the 5, but someone that can play the 4 and maybe, even the 5 when Dane's off the floor, kind of as someone that has that height, but the ability to play on the perimeter, have some skill, do some of the things that Coleman Hawkins does. That's something that they're intrigued with. A ball handling guard that's a veteran. I think that's something that you have obviously Epps, and you're going to want to find someone that fits with him. You have Gibbs Lawhorn coming in. You have Sincere. I think that someone with experience that could maybe even play kind of a combo role, that's something as well. And then some reloading on the wings was always something that was thought about when you knew that Shannon most likely 1-year rental and obviously Matt's out of eligibility. So back to the portal, and I know that they've had a lot of appeal there. I think if Shannon's got to play a little bit better down the stretch to be able to solidify his draft position. But if Coleman gets picked, that's to take a 3-star and be able to put him in that mix. I think that says a lot about Illinois, and they can sell that. But obviously NIL, they're winning and everything. But gear up for yet another intriguing offseason. It should be fun. April's
going to be intense yet again. Before I let you go, our boy Carp just tweeted this out. And Carp's never one to mince words, right? He just said, I think this is an aberration about this year, which are 8-6, 17-8 overall, right outside the AP top 25. His record in the conference speaks for itself. I hope and think this is just a blah year, and I also hope and think he'll learn a few things in regards to roster construction. I don't mean to call out Carp, but if this is your blah year, things are going pretty well for like this. before the portal, this would have been a huge rebuilding year. Illinois probably wouldn't have been a tournament team, right? If they would have had to rely on all these freshmen and RJ Menendez and Coleman Hawkins. And I think roster construction, like Brad Underwood looks pretty good right now because Terrence Shannon and Matthew Meyer played really well, probably all Big Ten caliber players. Coleman Hawkins is a really good recruiting find, even if you get frustrated with him. Jaden Epps and Ty Rogers look great. Sincere Harris looks like a good find. So I just want to bring that up. Like, yeah, this season they're not dominant. They're not a great team, but they're a good team. They're an NCAA tournament team. They could lose first round in the NCAA tournament. They could go to a Sweet 16. I don't know. It's going to depend on which team shows up, if they make shots that day, which is becoming a concern. But I do think they play defense pretty consistently well. So I just think it's a good team in a Big Ten that's deep. You can lose any night on the road. But, yeah, I don't think this is a team I'm definitely going to be marking in for my Sweet 16 once those NCAA tournament brackets come out.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if this is an off year, I mean, look where – I know that some people might be like, all right, let's get beyond the John Gross years, the end of Bruce Weber. To make the tournament isn't a huge accomplishment and shouldn't be that hard. But right now you look at them, projected 6th seed, and you're not sweating whether they're going to get in or not. Illinois is too good of a program to have to worry about that, and at least Brad has gotten the program back to a position where they're not doing that. I do get the frustration of it because on paper, this team is probably, I mean, they're more talented than probably what they've shown big picture or the grand scope of the season. And if they lose at Indiana, they'll be 8-7 in a Big Ten that isn't great. I mean, it's a very deep league. It's a team that it's a league that's got a number of good teams, got some very good ones. I think that you consider Purdue, Indiana, those. Illinois can be that, but the fact of that they haven't won a lot of marquee games, like, all of a sudden, some of it's not Illinois' fault, like sweeping Wisconsin and it not meaning all that much, or beating a Tom Izzo team at home, or what you did at Ohio State. All of a sudden, what usually would be kind of resume building wins and ones you hang your hat on don't mean as much. So, but yeah, I mean, you got swept by Penn State. You lost in convincing fashion Indiana. You lost at Iowa. You only have one quad one in Big Ten play. I think
I don't know how much longer that Rutgers one's going to hold up because they just lost to Nebraska at home.
Did they really?
Tominaga, man.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. 22 points.
Well, they're definitely not going to be paying Fred Hoiberg's $10 million buyout, apparently.
Who would have thought it? Collins and Hoiberg both saving their jobs this year, and then maybe is Greg Gard on the hottest seat in the Big Ten? Or Holtman probably. Yeah, those two are those two going to lose their job with one bad season, and those other guys keep their jobs?
I don't think so. I
think you got to have 2 bad years, but I feel like Holtman should bolt.
Yeah, I think it's getting uglier and uglier. He's got a great recruiting class coming in next year. I mean, he's always got a lot of talent. I know I get the frustration. Illinois fans can relate to not getting to a Sweet 16, but to have the bottom fall out like it did this year. Wisconsin won't do it. I'd be shocked if they did, although people maybe said that about Paul Chris.
Yeah.
I
think the pressure of this team is the last 2 years of not making the Sweet 16. That's why this team, like, I think a lot of people would enjoy it and have a little less. I don't think a lot of the fan base is freaking out, so I don't want to overreact to a couple people. But the reason there's more pressure on this team is because the last 2 great teams, Big Ten championship teams, did not make it to the second weekend. So I think a lot of people would just enjoy, hey, we made the NCAA tournament. Let's see if we can make a run. There's more pressure on it because it's like, well, we haven't been there in 17, 18 years.
There's no doubt about that. There's absolutely no doubt. I think also, though, I mean, when Brad comes out preseason and says, this is my most talented team that I've had, when we have 3 guys that have NBA conversations, like when Coleman's on the mock draft, when Terrence is on the mock draft, Matthew Meyer's been in NBA draft combine. When you have that level of talent, when you factor in the best recruiting class Illinois had in a decade, it's been something we've talked about leading into the season. And we're not doing kind of the obituary here of what went wrong or anything. The season's not over, but I think that there was also the risk of just kind of the inconsistency. And I mean, we saw it last year with Michigan. We saw it even with Texas, maybe even more of a comparable example of, what Beard did to the portal last year. And Texas had a a pretty good year, but not the year that people really would have expected. So I think the highs of this season maybe haven't been there that maybe we would have thought of by mid-February. And I think that maybe the ceiling that we talked about going in,
after
we haven't
Vegas and after Texas.
Yeah, maybe we just haven't seen that enough here recently to buy it as much as maybe the worry of the downside.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of teams that have gone heavy portal that are killing it on the court right now. Right, like that's where listen, I had them 2 in the Big Ten because I thought the Big Ten sucked. I had Indiana 1 because I was like, who else am I going to pick? I didn't see Edie being this dominant or those freshman guards being that good. I just thought it was going to be a bunch of above average teams. That's kind of what it's turned into. And I thought Illinois would have enough talent to do that. I thought Sky Clark would be obviously an impact player, and he hasn't been. But Shannon and Meyer have been about what I expected. Maybe Hawkins hasn't been as consistent. Hawkins hasn't been as consistent as you want. RJ Melendez has not been the player you thought he would be. But it's almost where I thought they would be. But if they're underachieving, Derek, it's not by 5 wins, in my opinion. It's 2.
Right. Yeah, I think Shannon here over the last month probably, in comparison to what we saw early in the year, and kind of I thought that as far as his three-point shooting, which was really improved at Texas Tech last year, it's obviously been a lot more inconsistent. He's just had stretches where he's kind of no-showed or just been a little too quiet, and that's pretty concerning kind of as you look down the line of what this team, they get in a bind there in March. But, yeah, I mean, they still won 8 of 11. So, kind of
the context of it all, right?
To bring that back to it is they're not in a bad spot. They still have a good opportunity.
Right. They don't have a marquee win here recently.
They don't.
Right, like Wisconsin on the road is not a marquee win anymore. Rutgers at home is not
only quad 1 since Texas. Man.
It's not a marquee win. So yeah, I get that. That's where Indiana is a big opportunity, and Purdue on the road. Those are really the only other opportunities because Ohio State on the road is a quad 1 victory still at some point. Northwestern at home has the chance to be. Michigan at home, I don't know if it will be. Probably not by that point. But yeah, there's not many more opportunities. That's where I mean, there's not much room for them to go up in this NCAA tournament seeding. I love this comment. There's some disagreement. I'll let you go, Derek, here in a second. But Joe said, or Glenn said, please talk my wife off the Illinois ledge. And then Joe followed up with, being on the ledge is part of the Illini experience. Just fitting.
It's a great call.
Yeah, it's a
great call.
Derek Piper, thank you, buddy. Safe travels home from Happy Valley, man.
Appreciate it. Fun as always.
All right, everybody, thank you for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. We appreciate you guys. Give us a follow wherever you get your podcast. Give us a rating and review. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, give us a like. Hit the subscribe button. That really helps us out. We appreciate all your support. We'll have all the interaction after these games. We'll be back on Saturday, of course, after the Indiana game. Joey Wagner and Derek Piper will be in Bloomington for that one in what is one of the best Big Ten atmospheres. For a long time, I thought it was the best. And then Mackey Arena the last couple of years has just been insane. I think State Farm Center is probably in my top 3 or 4 for that as well. So another huge opportunity for Illinois, one of very few quad 1 opportunities left for Illinois the rest of the season, and a big one as they try and get that double bye in the Big Ten tournament. All right, everybody have a great night. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.